Hi everyone, this is Gary Fales, F like fantastic, A-L-E-S like Sam. Today I want to talk to you about trustees. Now in a revocable living trust, there's going to be something called the initial trustee. That normally is the person who starts the trust, or the grantor, or in other words, you. You want to be able to control your assets. You want to be able to maintain that high degree of control over the financial bank accounts or the real estate or whatever it may be. And that's one of the beautiful things about a revocable living trust. You can be the initial trustee. You'll have full control over all aspects of the trust. Well, when you die, obviously, you will not be able to sign for the trust anymore. And so we have to have what is called the successor trustee in the trust. We need to have that named ahead of time so that when you die, because we don't know when you're going to die, but when you do die, we automatically have someone who can step up and be the successor trustee. Now, I like to call that person the death trustee to differentiate a successor trustee during death from a successor trustee during life. Now, more on the death trustee. What is the job of the death trustee? Well, their job is to gather or marshal all of the assets together and then pay off any of your creditors. Then they will read the instructions in the trust to determine who you've named as beneficiaries and then follow out your wishes in giving the assets down to the beneficiaries. Now, a successor trustee can also be a beneficiary. There's usually not a conflict. However, when they're acting as a successor death trustee, they are fiduciaries, meaning they need to act with the highest degree of loyalty towards the beneficiaries that the law knows. So if there's other beneficiaries, let's say brothers or sisters, and you've named one of your daughters to be a successor death trustee, they need to make sure that they are acting professionally and that they can account for everything that takes place once you have died so that they can render an accurate accounting to the other beneficiaries. We can talk more about trustee duties another time. For now, I just want to give a high-level overview of the different types of trustees that you can find in your different types of plans. Now, in the simple plan, all of our revocable living trusts will ask you for a successor death trustee. In the full plan, we use a different type of trustee in the event that you have lost your mind, or let's say that you're in a coma. In those situations where you're incapacitated, we want to have what is called the disability trustee. Now, the disability trustee's job is special. Their job is to only take care of your happiness, your life, because of course you're still alive. So why did we end up coming up or inventing the disability trustee? Well, we were having a problem in the simple plan. A simple plan is great if you just want to avoid probate. But if you want to actually have a plan that's going to protect you while you're alive, you need to think about doing the full plan, because in the full plan we're going to have questions asking who should be your disability trustee. Think of it. If you don't have a disability trustee and the only thing you've done is name a death trustee, and if you've lost your mind, you're going to create an unwanted conflict of interest. For example, if I name my daughter to be the successor trustee, death trustee, but I become out of my mind, she has a conflict of interest in the following manner. The more money she spends on me taking care of my life, let's say that I have certain requirements that I want to maintain that I think of as a good life. And if she spends money from the trust on me, that means there's less money for the beneficiaries once I've died. In other words, there's not as much money for her or for her brothers and sisters. Let's say that her brother comes along and says, I don't approve of the way you're spending the money on Dad. You're spending too much money on him. You're spending my inheritance on Dad. Of course, they won't come out and say it that way, but in effect, that may be what they're saying. Now, if she's only designated as a death trustee, she's torn, because if she spends more money on Dad, that's less money for the beneficiaries once he dies. But if she preserves the assets, that means there's going to be, of course, more money for the beneficiaries, but now is she fulfilling her duty to her father? Oh, she's torn. And so to avoid this potential dangerous conflict of interest, we recommend getting disability trustees. Now, it may be that you still name your daughter, in this example, as your disability trustee and as your death trustee. But when she has that special role title of disability trustee, and if her brother comes to her saying, I don't like the way you're spending the money on Dad, you're spending my inheritance, she can simply say, you know what, brother? I have no obligation to you right now. You are not a current beneficiary. I am acting in my capacity as a disability trustee, and all my duty is to use the assets for my father's use and enjoyment and to not worry about you. And so that is a wonderful tool that we use called the disability trustee, okay, in addition to a death trustee. Now finally, there's a third type of trustee that I want to cover. This is kind of a long segment today, but there's another segment on the successor trustee role. If in the event that you have, let's say, a temporary incapacity, it's not a permanent disability, but temporary, we highly recommend that you use what is called the silent partner trustee. Now, a silent partner trustee is going to be somebody that you trust, who's going to be a current beneficiary with you right now. So if this is you, they're going to be a current trustee with you right now. Now, they're not going to do anything. That's why I call it the silent partner. And they don't have more control than you do. Okay, they're underneath you. In other words, you have the right, without their permission, to fire them, to remove them, so that they can no longer act. But they're there just in case you have a temporary incapacity or temporary situation in which you need somebody there to help you pay your bills, or to deal with the government, or to deal with insurance or life insurance, or to deal with retirement plans, whatever the case may be. So I call that person the silent partner. Here's when they're used. Let's say that it's traditionally seen most commonly in older folks or somebody who is quite ill. And in that situation, they may end up wanting to name somebody who's going to be on their bank accounts with them just to serve in an emergency. I never recommend that you have somebody who's going to end up being a joint owner on a bank account. Rather, we should have that person named as a silent partner. They're not going to do anything, but they're there to pick up the pieces immediately. They have that immediate ability to pick up the pieces in the event that there's a temporary incapacity. Now, in the event that your temporary incapacity becomes permanent, well, then that's when the disability trustee will come into play. I have another segment where I talk about how do we determine if you're incapacitated. This is a very exciting segment. I won't cover it in this little clip here. So there's a little bit on the death trustee, the disability trustee, and the silent partner. I hope you learned something. Thank you.